They called him Old Man Rivers, not because that was his name, but because he lived on River Street, in the last house at the end of the block where the pavement cracked and the streetlights barely worked. He was 73 years old, thin as a rail, with white hair buzzed close to his scalp and eyes that never quite looked at you directly. He kept to himself, mowed his lawn every Saturday, took out his trash on Tuesday mornings, bought groceries from the corner store, and never caused trouble. The neighborhood kids figured he was harmless, just another old man waiting to die. That's why they targeted him. It started small. Teenagers from the local gang, Los Cuervos, the Crows, would walk past his house and knock over his trash cans, laugh when he came out to pick up the mess. Then it escalated. They'd throw rocks at his windows, spray paint his fence, sit on his porch steps drinking beer and smoking, daring him to say something. He never did, just cleaned up after them, fixed what they broke, and went back inside. The gang thought he was scared, weak, an easy target in a neighborhood where nobody called the cops and everybody minded their own business. But what they didn't know, what nobody in that rundown neighborhood knew, was that the quiet old man at the end of River Street had a past that didn't show up in public records, a past that was buried so deep, even the government had trouble finding it. His real name wasn't Rivers, it was Robert Cain, and 30 years ago, he'd been one of the most effective operators in Delta Force, Black Ops, the kind of missions that didn't exist on paper, the kind where you went in alone, completed the objective, and disappeared before anyone knew you were there. He'd operated in places most people couldn't pronounce, done things most people couldn't imagine. And when he retired, he'd done what all good operators do. He vanished, changed his name, moved somewhere quiet, tried to forget. But some skills don't fade. Some instincts don't die. And when you push a man like Robert Cain far enough, even after 30 years of silence, he remembers exactly who he used to be. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in late September. Cain was sitting in his kitchen, eating a simple dinner, rice and beans, when he heard his granddaughter screaming outside. He was on his feet before his chair hit the ground, out the back door, into the alley. And there she was, Maya, 16 years old, smart, kind, the only family he had left. She was on the ground, her backpack torn open, books scattered across the concrete. 3 gang members stood over her. One of them, a kid named Flacco, was holding her phone. Another, a heavyset kid they called Gordo, was laughing. Cain's voice was calm. Let her go. Flacco looked up, surprised. Then he grinned. Or what? Old man, you gonna call the cops? He stepped closer, his face inches from Cain's. You don't do shit around here. You just take it, like a bitch. Cain didn't respond. He just looked at the kid, really looked at him. And for the first time, Flacco felt something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not because Cain looked threatening, but because he didn't. He just stood there, perfectly still, like a man deciding whether killing you was worth the effort. Flacco stepped back, tried to recover, tossed the phone on the ground. Whatever, let's go. The 3 of them walked away, laughing and shoving each other. Maya scrambled to her feet, grabbed her stuff, and ran to her grandfather. He held her until she stopped shaking. Then he walked her inside, made her tea, told her everything was fine. But when she went to bed, he sat in the dark for a long time, thinking. The next morning, Flacco didn't show up for his usual corner hangout. His friends figured he was sleeping off a hangover. By the afternoon, they started to worry. By evening, they went to his apartment. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal. Except Flacco was gone. His phone was on the table. His shoes were by the door. But he was just gone. 2 days later, Gordo disappeared. He'd been walking home from his girlfriend's place, a route he'd taken 100 times. Surveillance cameras caught him turning down an alley. He never came out the other side. The cops searched, found nothing, no body, no blood, no witnesses, just gone. Panic setting. Los Cuervos had 15 members. They controlled 3 blocks, ran drugs, extorted local businesses, and scared the hell out of everyone. But now, 2 of them have vanished without a trace. The gang leader, a man in his 30s named Chuco, called a meeting. He was smart, ruthless. He'd been to prison twice and survived both times. He stood in front of his crew and said what they were all thinking. Somebody's coming for us. They armed themselves, started moving in groups, stopped walking alone at night, but it didn't matter. One by one, they started disappearing. A kid named Lobo was found tied up in an abandoned warehouse, naked and crying, with a note pinned to his chest that said, "Leave." Another, a loudmouth named Tito, woke up in his own car parked outside the police station with a bag of cocaine in the trunk and an anonymous tip already called in. He was arrested within the hour. Truco knew it wasn't the cops. Cops didn't operate like this. This was something else. Someone else. He started asking questions, digging into the neighborhood. That's when someone mentioned the old man, the quiet one at the end of River Street, the one they'd been messing with for months. Truco didn't believe it at first, but then he did some digging. Talked to a contact who worked in records, asked about anyone on that street with a military background. The contact came back with nothing. No records, no history, just a guy named Rivers who lived there for 10 years, clean as a whistle. But Truco wasn't stupid. He knew what no records meant. It meant someone didn't want to be found. He decided to test it, sent 2 of his remaining guys to the old man's house, told them to scare him, break a window, make it clear he was next. The 2 of them went at midnight. Quiet, professional. They approached the house from the back, like they'd done a dozen times before. But this time was different. This time, the old man was waiting. They never made it to the house. One of them, a kid named Angel, woke up the next morning on the park bench 3 miles away with no memory of how he got there. The other, Chewy, showed up at the hospital with 2 dislocated shoulders and a broken nose, babbling about shadows and not being able to see who hit him. When the cops questioned him, he said he didn't remember, didn't see anything, just pain and darkness. Truco knew then he'd pushed too far, messed with the wrong man. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. He decided to handle it himself, loaded his gun, drove to River Street, parked a block away and walked to the old man's house. The lights were off, the porch was empty. He tried the door, unlocked. He stepped inside, gun raised, ready for anything. The house was dark, silent. He moved through the living room, scanning for movement. That's when he felt it. Cold steel pressed against the back of his neck. A voice, calm and low, spoke behind him. "Drop the gun." Truco froze, tried to calculate his odds. The voice spoke again. "I said drop it." Truco let the gun fall. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "Turn around." Slowly, Truco turned, and there, in the darkness, stood the old man. But he didn't look old anymore. He looked like something else, something dangerous. His eyes were cold. His posture was perfect, military, trained. Truco realized, too late, that he'd made a terrible mistake. Cain didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at the man who terrorized his neighborhood, terrorized his granddaughter. Finally, he spoke. "You're going to leave. You and what's left of your crew, you're going to leave this neighborhood and never come back. If I see any of you again, you won't get a warning. You'll just disappear, permanently. Do you understand?" Truco nodded, his throat dry. Cain stepped back, picked up the gun, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, handed it back to Truco empty. "Now get out." Truco left. Didn't run, didn't look back, just walked to his car and drove away. By the next morning, Los Cuervos were gone. Word spread fast. The gang had abandoned their territory, moved to another part of the city. Nobody knew why. But the people on River Street didn't ask questions. They just noticed that things were quieter, safer. The old man still mowed his lawn every Saturday, still took out his trash on Tuesdays. But now, people nodded when they saw him, said hello, showed respect. Maya asked him once what had happened, how the gang just disappeared. He looked at her and said, "Sometimes bad people realize they picked the wrong fight." That's all. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push, because deep down, she knew. Her grandfather wasn't just some old man. He was the reason she could walk home alone now, the reason the neighborhood felt safe again. And if anyone ever asked him about his past, about where he came from or what he'd done, he'd just smile and say, "I used to work for the government, nothing special." But those who knew, the ones who'd seen what happened to Los Cuervos, They knew better. Because sometimes the most dangerous men are the ones who don't look dangerous at all. The ones who've spent years being invisible, learning to blend in, waiting. And when the moment comes, when someone threatens the people they love, they don't make threats. They don't call the cops. They just handle it, quietly, efficiently, the way they were trained to. Robert Cain never told anyone his real name, never talked about Delta Force, never mentioned the missions or the wars or the men he'd buried. He just lived his quiet life at the end of River Street. And if you drove past his house, you'd see an old man watering his plants. Harmless, forgettable. But if you looked closely, if you really paid attention, you'd notice something. The way he scanned his surroundings. The way he moved, fluid and deliberate. The way his eyes never stopped watching. Because some men never really retire. They just wait. And when the time comes, they remember exactly who they are. And God help anyone who forgets. 3 weeks after Los Cuervos left the neighborhood, life on River Street has settled into a new rhythm. Kids played in the street without looking over their shoulders. The corner store stayed open past dark. People sat on their porches in the evenings, talking to neighbors they hadn't spoken to in years. It was like someone had lifted a blanket of fear that had been smothering the block for so long. People had forgotten what it felt like to breathe freely. But not everyone had forgotten. Not everyone had moved on. Detective Maria Ortiz sat in her unmarked car outside the corner store, watching the neighborhood through tinted windows. She'd been assigned to the gang unit for 6 years, knew Los Cuervos intimately, knew their patterns, their territories, their operations. And she knew that gangs didn't just abandon valuable territory, not without a reason, not without a fight. Something had happened, something big, and she was going to find out what. She'd interviewed every member of Los Cuervos she could find. Most had scattered to different parts of the city. The ones she managed to track down all told the same story. They decided to move. Fresh start, better opportunities elsewhere. But their eyes told a different story. They were scared, genuinely terrified. And when she pressed them, asked them what really happened, they all said the same thing. Nothing. Just time to go. But Detective Ortiz was good at her job. She knew how to read people, and she knew fear when she saw it. These weren't men who'd made a business decision. These were men who'd run from something or someone. So she started digging. Pulled reports from the weeks before the gang left. 3 members reported missing, later found alive but traumatized. 2 arrests on anonymous tips. 1 member hospitalized with injuries he claimed came from falling downstairs. The pattern was clear. Someone had systematically dismantled the gang. Not killed them. That would have brought heat, federal attention, gang task forces. No, whoever did this was smarter than that. They'd scared them, broken them, made them run. Detective Ortiz's investigation led her to River Street, to the last house on the block, to an old man named Rivers who had no criminal record, no history of violence, and according to every database she checked, had appeared in the system exactly 10 years ago, with a clean slate and a social security number that checked out but felt wrong somehow. Too clean, too perfect. Like someone had built an identity from scratch. She knocked on his door one afternoon. Cain answered, holding a dish towel, looking every bit the harmless elderly man. He smiled politely. "Can I help you?" Detective Ortiz showed her badge. "I'm investigating the disappearance of a local gang, Los Cuervos. I understand they used to operate on this street. I'm talking to residents to see if anyone saw anything unusual." Cain shook his head. "I mostly keep to myself. Don't pay much attention to what goes on outside my fence." She studied him. His posture, his eyes. The way he stood in the doorway, blocking her view inside without making it obvious. "Did they ever bother you? The gang?" Cain shrugged. "Kids threw some trash on my lawn once or twice. Nothing serious." She waited, letting the silence stretch. It was an old interrogation technique. Most people couldn't handle silence. They'd fill it with words. But Cain just stood there, comfortable, waiting. Finally, she spoke. "Mr. Rivers, can I ask where you're from originally? Before you moved here?" "Ohio. Small town. Nothing special." "And what did you do for work?" "Factory. Machinist. Retired about 12 years ago." It was a good answer. Simple. Believable. But she didn't believe it. Is there anything else, detective? I've got dinner on the stove. She handed him her card. If you think of anything, please call me. He took the card, nodded, and closed the door gently. Detective Ortiz sat in her car for a moment, thinking. She pulled out her phone and called a contact at the FBI, a guy who specialized in deep background checks. She gave him the name, Rivers, and the address. I need everything you can find, and I mean everything. 3 days later, her contact called back. His voice was tight. Maria, where did you get this name? Why? What did you find? A pause. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Before 10 years ago, this guy doesn't exist. No birth certificate, no school records, no work history. It's a ghost identity. Professional level. The kind of thing you only see with witness protection or intelligence assets. Her stomach tightened. So, he's undercover? Another pause. If he is, nobody's telling me. I made some calls, discreet ones, and I got shut down hard. Like career-threatening hard. Whoever this guy is, somebody very powerful wants him left alone. My advice? Drop it. Maria ended the call and sat in her car, staring at the house at the end of River Street. She should drop it. She knew that. But she spent 6 years watching Los Cuervos terrorize this neighborhood. Watching them recruit kids, sell drugs, hurt people. And now they were gone. And the only explanation that made sense was the quiet old man who didn't exist before 10 years ago. She decided to watch him, not officially. Just in her spare time, she'd park down the street in the evenings, watch his routine. And what she saw was exactly what she expected. An old man living a quiet life. He'd water his plants, take walks, sit on his porch reading. But then she noticed something. The way he walked. Not the shuffle of an elderly man, but measured, deliberate steps. Always scanning, always aware. And once, late at night, she saw him leave his house at 2 a.m. No car, just walking. She followed on foot, keeping her distance. He moved through the neighborhood with purpose, checking alleys, looking at rooftops. After an hour, he stopped in front of an abandoned building, stood there for a moment, then went inside. She waited. 10 minutes later, he emerged and walked home. The next morning, she checked the building, found 3 sleeping bags, empty food containers, drug paraphernalia, a small stash of stolen goods. She called it in. Patrol units arrived and arrested 3 men, low-level criminals who'd been operating out of that squad. When she asked them how they got caught, one of them said, "We heard someone walking around outside, got spooked, and ran. But when we came back, the cops were already here." Maria realized something then. Cain wasn't just living quietly. He was still operating, still watching, still protecting his neighborhood, just from the shadows. She didn't know whether to arrest him or thank him. In the end, she did neither. She just stopped watching. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from a quiet old man who remembers what it means to serve, to protect, even when nobody's watching, even when nobody knows. But not everyone had given up on River Street. Truco sat in a dimly lit apartment across town, drinking whiskey and staring at his phone. He lost his territory, lost his crew, lost his reputation. Word had spread in the streets that he'd been run off by an old man. He was a joke now. And that, more than anything, burned in his chest like acid. He couldn't let it stand. Couldn't let some geriatric nobody destroy everything he'd built. So he started planning. Not a direct attack. That had failed. But something else. Something that would hurt. He spent 2 weeks gathering information, learning about the old man, about his routine, about his life. And then he found it. The granddaughter, Maya, 16 years old, went to school 5 blocks away, walked home every day at 3:30, alone. Truco smiled. He wouldn't touch her. That would bring too much heat. But he'd scare her, make her afraid to leave her house, make the old man feel helpless, and then, when he was broken, when he understood what it felt like to lose, Truco would disappear, move to another state, start over. But first, he needed this. He recruited 2 guys from another gang, outsiders who didn't know the history, paid them cash, told them to follow the girl, scare her, make her think she was being watched. They started the next Monday, following her to school, standing across the street when she left, not approaching, just watching, making sure she saw them. Maya noticed immediately, told her grandfather that night. Two men following her, watching. Cain's expression didn't change, but inside, something cold and familiar clicked into place. He walked Maya to school the next morning, watched her go inside. Then he waited. The two men showed up an hour later, parked across the street. Cain approached their car, tapped on the window. The driver rolled it down, annoyed. "What?" Cain's voice was calm. "You're being paid to follow my granddaughter." The driver's face went pale. "How did you?" Cain leaned in. "I'm going to give you two choices. You take the money you've been paid and leave town tonight, or I make sure you never work again." The driver looked at his partner. They'd been paid $2,000, half up front. But looking at the old man's eyes, they both realized the same thing. No amount of money was worth this. They drove away. Didn't even finish the job, just left. Chuko found out that night his guys had bailed. He sat in his apartment, furious, drained a bottle of whiskey, and made a decision. If nobody else would do it, he would, himself. Tomorrow, he'd wait outside the school, confront the old man, show him he wasn't afraid, show everyone. He loaded his gun, drank another bottle, and passed out on his couch. He woke up at dawn to a sound, a creak in the floor. His apartment was small, one bedroom. He lived alone. There shouldn't be anyone else here. He reached for his gun on the coffee table. It wasn't there. He sat up, heart pounding. That's when he saw him, the old man, sitting in the chair across the room, holding Chuko's gun. The safety was off. The barrel was pointed at the floor, but the message was clear. Chuko's mouth went dry. "How did you?" Cain's voice was quiet. "Your door lock is garbage, you sleep like a drunk, and you're predictable." He set the gun on the table beside him, not close enough for Chuko to reach. "You came after my family again, after I warned you." Chuko tried to muster courage. Failed. Just stammered. I didn't touch her." Cain nodded. "I know. If you had, you'd already be dead." Chuko felt his bladder weaken. Cain stood slowly. "Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna leave. Not just this neighborhood, this city, this state. You're going to disappear. And if I ever hear your name again, if you ever come within 100 miles of this place, I will find you. And next time, I won't wake you up first." He walked to the door, stopped. "Look back. You should know something. I didn't want this life anymore. I was done, but you made a mistake. You threatened someone I love. And when you do that, you don't get second chances. You get one warning. This is yours." Cain left, didn't lock the door behind him, just walked out into the early morning light. Chuko sat frozen on his couch for an hour. Then he packed a bag, took the cash he had stashed, and drove. Didn't stop until he was 3 states away. He never came back. Detective Ortiz heard about it. Chuko had vanished. Skipped parole. Warrant issued. But she knew he wasn't coming back. She sat in her office, looking at the file on her desk. The one labeled River Street Investigation. She closed it, filed it away. Some cases, she realized, didn't need to be solved. Some problems fixed themselves. Or rather, they were fixed by people who didn't want credit, didn't want recognition, just wanted to protect what mattered. Maya graduated high school 2 years later, top of her class, got a scholarship to college. Cain sat in the audience, wearing his only suit, watching her walk across that stage. When she got her diploma, she looked back at him and smiled. And in that moment, he knew. Everything he'd done, everything he sacrificed, every mission, every scar, every nightmare. It had all been worth it, because she was safe and she was free. After the ceremony, they went to dinner, just the two of them. She asked him once more, "Grandpa, what did you really do before you retired?" He smiled, cut his steak, took a bite, chewed slowly. Then he said, "I kept people safe, that's all." She looked at him, really looked at him, and she understood. He wasn't just her grandfather. He was the reason she could walk to school without fear, the reason the neighborhood felt like home again, the reason bad men ran when they heard his name, even if they didn't know it. She reached across the table, took his hand. "Thank you." He squeezed back, didn't say anything, didn't need to. Some things were understood, some debts could never be repaid, but they could be honored. And in that quiet restaurant, over a simple meal, two people who survived different kinds of wars, sat together, grateful, safe, home. And on River Street, the lights stayed on a little later that night. People sat on their porches, kids played in the street, and at the end of the block, in the last house where the pavement cracked and the streetlights barely worked, an old man sat in his chair, reading, resting, but always watching, always ready. Because some men never stop being soldiers. They just choose their battles more carefully. And when the time comes, when someone threatens what they love, they don't hesitate. They don't debate. They just act. Quietly, efficiently, the way they were trained, and the neighborhood never knew, never had to. Because that's what heroes do. They protect without praise, serve without recognition, and disappear back into the shadows when the job is done, leaving nothing behind but safety and peace, and the faint echo of a man who refused to let evil win. Not on his street, not in his home, not ever retry.